What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be taking a little look into the world of nootropics. Give you a little introduction anyway. We're not going to dive into too deep or too specific in certain drugs, etc. But for those that don't know, nootropics are just compounds, drugs, supplements that have a positive effect on the brain essentially, or promote better brain function, etc. So why nootropics are so interesting, and there's a lot of people out there that, you know, like biohackers or brain hackers, you know, whatever they want to call themselves, that specifically focus on trying to find the perfect formula to take to make their brain work at 100% efficiency, or as efficient, as effective as possible. Obviously, you can't use 100% of your brain because otherwise it'd be like Limitless, taking the old blue pill and being amazing. Sad that doesn't exist. However, I personally think trying to manipulate or alter your brain chemistry too much could potentially have some kind of negative effect, implication. You know, there's quite a lot of you know, not necessarily addictive traits to some of these drugs, but reliance upon the brain not functioning effectively and properly. But now, I don't advocate using nootropics all year round. Something that, you know, there's points within looking at bodybuilders, looking at physique athletes, looking at people just transforming their physique, right? There's peaks and points within the, you know, the transformation or the process the body goes through where brain function takes a dive, right? Now, that, you know, it's a double-sided coin here. So in the growth phase, those that have pushed their body weight, those that have tried to gain new tissue for an extended period of time and have gained an excessive amount of weight, what happens? You know, right at the peak or towards the end, you get slow, you get lethargic, you don't want to do anything. Every time you eat, you just want to sleep. And for me personally, I found that nootropics at that point, when I started to notice brain function was slowing down and my own ability to perform within work was taking a hit and was being hindered by it, that was when nootropics, you know, kind of, it done something for me, right? Now, in between that phase, I was eating more food, got loads more energy, calories are going in, feeling good. I didn't need them. But at that point where it went the other way on that inverted U, that's when I started to use nootropics to at least make sure that I could do what was necessary and what was the, you know, the minimum requirement of me in my day, which is probably a lot more than most. But on the flip side of that, so fat loss, everyone who's been on a diet, everyone who has restricted calories, gone into a calorie deficit, lost body fat, we understand and know that that is a uncomfortable process. Same way that forcing food in and trying to get big is just not comfy, right? You'll hit a point where you'll start in a deficit and everything will be flying. You'll be so productive. The lack of calories, or going from, should I say, from that growth phase to the calorie deficit is where you really thrive. You know, energy starts to get better, you lose the lethargicness, you lose that slow mentality, you start to feel efficient, you start to feel really, really productive. But it doesn't last long, because eventually you then hit that point where you're burning through fat, you're using up calories a lot faster than you should be. Maybe you're introducing some lipolytics, maybe some fat burners, more cardio. You know, something is bringing that calorie deficit lower and lower week by week or month by month, or however you're structuring it. And eventually you'll hit a point where you get to a body fat level that's not comfortable for you. Now that depends person to person. Everything is always, you know, genetically individual. But you'll get to a point where now you're starting to feel shit. Now you're starting to feel moody. Now you're starting to feel hungry all the time. And that constant belly empty hunger distracts from your work, right? So that's just a psychological thing there. But looking at performance and function, right? Every single process within the body requires energy, including the brain. So in a calorie deficit, it's natural that at some point you would hit that point where there's not enough calories for peak function of your brain's connections, synapses, pathways, etc. And your performance on a mental aspect is going to start to slow down. You're going to start to hit that point, and I can say that I'm probably at that about now, my deficit, where I'm starting to notice I'm trying to work, but I'm just not, one-on-one is not making two as fast as it used to, if that makes sense. You know, it's not like an exact feeling. It's not like a boom, okay, now I'm here now. But over time, you progressively get slower within reaction times, within, you know, just the ability to do work, right? You'll notice it. Whatever you do in your normal job, whatever if you're doing something that's quite mentally challenging or requires a lot of thought, you'll notice that you just progressively over time get a little bit slower at it, a little bit less efficient. And again, this is another scenario of when nootropics can be useful. Okay, as I said, I'm not the biggest advocate for, like, you know, brain hacking and messing around with your brain chemistry to find like a perfect. I can see the concept behind it, and yeah, if someone can do some good studies on it and show to me that it's perfectly fine, then sweet, I might jump on board. But at the moment, I think nootropics are something that, you know, is a needs analysis situation. It's a as and when it's needed input, you know, because everything carries stimulus, everything carries fatigue. There's, you know, nothing is free in life. You know, you had that expression, nothing, everything comes with a cost, right? So that's just a little introduction into nootropics, when you might think about using them, where they might apply. So nootropics, what essentially, or what originally are they intended for? Now, looking at a clinical setting, there are quite a few that we use in supplements. You know, there's a lot of supplement companies that are bringing out nootropic formulas, you know, nootropic matrix and all this, and you don't really know what's in them. But quite a lot of the substances, I'll go through some common examples in a moment for you all. But essentially, what were they originally designed for in a clinical setting? Now, quite a lot of the drugs were essentially looked into at some point during their lifespan of being in circulation to the positive benefits they have on the brain, i.e. specifically thinking about mental decay and disorders, you know, things that are, you know, deterioration of brain health over time, things like Alzheimer's, dementia, etc., things like that. This is where in a clinical setting, some of these drugs can be used quite effectively to slow down the effects of these conditions, diseases. But obviously, human beings, we've worked out that they can be taken anyway to either help prevent things like this from occurring later on in life if you've got a genetic predisposition, or if these things run in a family. Then we know that certain drugs could be used to slow down that process ever happening or prevent it, maybe. But also on the flip side of, we're craving trying to improve ourselves, always trying to be better. So someone stumbled along the fact that obviously, yeah, well, this drug helps slow down Alzheimer's, but, you know, how does it slow down Alzheimer's? By stimulating X, Y, and Z mechanism within the brain. Oh, well, this could be useful for all these fuckers out here that want to just fucking get on with work. So typical, I'm going to go through some basic examples of nootropics, that really common ones that you'll find in most nootropic supplementations, or things that you probably use on a day-to-day basis without realizing. You know, 'cause you got to think now there's a lot of pre-workouts that are specifically intended for pre-workout plus brain function. Like they'll label them all differently, but it'll be a pre combined with nootropic effects because it will help you focus within your workout. There's pump matrices, pump and nootropic combinations, nootropic supplements on their own. So probably without realizing, maybe, you know, there's definitely people out there that will probably be taking things like this without actually realizing, you know, that the effect they're getting from these supplements is not due to the pre itself, but the nootropic matrix or you know, panel that they're putting into these new products. It's become a very popular thing. So your typical nootropics that you'll find on a day-to-day basis, the common ones anyway, that are found in most nootropic panels would be things like caffeine, lion's mane, L-theanine, and the holy goat that bodybuilders praise and worship, ashwagandha. Sounds like an African tribal ritual, that. Well, it does come from an African root bark, so funny clue in the name there. That probably makes more sense. Anyway, so caffeine. Everyone knows about caffeine, right? It's in 99% of the things your body drinks, in all sugar-free drinks, sugary drinks. You have to literally buy uncaffeinated sugar drinks. It's in coffee, it's in tea, it's in pre-workouts, unless you buy a pump. You can take it as a supplement. It's quite readily, you know, accepted and taken, you know, day-to-day life by all people in all walks of life. But obviously there is a tolerance to it. But the main reason why caffeine's found in things like Red Bull, why it's found in pre-workouts, is because not only is it a stimulant, but it also has some positive cognitive effects. So stimulation of the brain, not just total body. That energy you get, that surge you get from having a caffeine hit, it also has an effect up here. Lion's mane is a compound found within mushrooms. It has some amazing cognitive effects. It is pretty common in all nootropics. L-theanine is a broken down form of the proteins L-glutamine. L-glutamine, I believe. Basically, so your body will make it in its own to some degree. It just in a natural process of breaking down protein into amino acids and then shuttling the amino acids where they need to go applicably in the body. But L-theanine is also found in quite large quantity within green tea, well, most teas, some mushrooms. But again, another thing you'll find in most sleep aids, most nootropics, because of its interaction with GABA receptors in the brain, helping to not necessarily control anxiety, but has a positive correlation in that kind of going down that route of simulating the parasympathetic tone. Now, obviously, KSM-66 ashwagandha is a brilliant cortisol suppressant. Now, cortisol is released in the brain. It is part of the reason why you wake up. It's very, very important part of your circadian rhythm. But it's also stimulated. Cortisol production is stimulated by artificial light, daylight. And then KSM ashwagandha helps to control cortisol, but cortisol also has some negative implications around the body if it's in excess. So ashwagandha is a very good means to control that. A few that are not quite so common, but are still found in some nootropics. So you've got things like phospholipirin. This is currently one of the up there supplements or leading supplements in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. It's up there with some of the more higher class medical interventions, but it is a supplement. You can get it. It doesn't have to be bought on prescription or anything like that, and it is being found in quite a lot of different nootropics nowadays. But like I said, the reason why it's used clinically or recommended for people with things like Alzheimer's and dementia is because it helps to slow down that degeneration of the brain. Also, alongside phospholipirin, there is things like bacopa extract, DMAE, and then on the more fruity side of things, you've got things like nicotine, psilocybin, or most commonly referred to as magic mushrooms. There are two fantastic nootropics, but I'll come on to that in a moment. Now, essentially, what we're looking at within nootropics is they are drugs that boost brain performance via different mechanisms of actions that interact with receptors, enzymes, ion channels, and even can be quite as simple as just having some kind of vasodilation effect within the brain. So it would expand small arteries and veins to increase blood flow, increase micronutrient partitioning and energy supply to the brain. Something as simple as just increasing the blood vessel diameter so that you get more energy, more glucose, more oxygen to the brain can improve brain function, of course, because you have more energy supplied. So it doesn't have to be as complicated as interactions with receptors, enzymes and ion channels. It can simply be something that expands blood vessels or has that vasodilator effect. There's other ways to look at increasing brain function without necessarily taking specific nootropic supplements. As bodybuilders, we know we exhibit high amounts of oxidative stress because of what we take, what we do, training, food, everything drives some degree of oxidative stress, and too much oxidative stress will cause damage from the free radicals everywhere in the body, including the brain. So the reduction of oxidative stress will also help in increasing brain function. Things like reducing inflammation. Now, obviously, reducing inflammation whole bodily, to some degree, not totally, because inflammation is the driver of new tissue. It is the driver of growing muscle, and it's the driver of a lot of processes, the healing process in the body. But reducing the amount of inflammation on the brain via some other form of supplementation could also have some much better positive cognitive effects. And something that's overlooked as simple as sleep, getting the adequate amount of sleep for you. Again, some people need 9 hours of sleep, some people need 6, some people can function perfectly off of 4. So working out what amount of sleep you need will massively play a role into improving the performance of your brain. A part of the reason also why in a fat loss phase you'll start to lose some cognitive function is also because the fact that you don't sleep as much. That horrible parasympathetic tone is there, high amounts of stimulant, high amount of epinephrine released, and it sits in the body for quite long periods of time, and it affects your sleep. So sleep goes down the hill in a fat loss phase. Another reason why during a fat loss phase nootropics will probably be necessary, because you're losing that quality recovery from sleep that will help brain function. Now, to work out your sleep, I would recommend getting an Oura ring. It's probably the most accurate tracking utility that we have available to us today for tracking sleep. You just wear it on your finger, and that will tell you roughly over time what amount of sleep, duration, REM and deep sleep percentages respectively you need to be optimal for you. something that you can tie into, you know, improving brain function there. And so, some of the more exotic, should we say, I guess that's the word to use for them, but more out-of-the-box nootropics that we have available to us, and stuff that I see contest prep clients, there's one that I'm a little bit swayed on. Now, from an aspect of someone who doesn't smoke, hasn't smoked, and will never smoke, nicotine can be a very, very good nootropic, an extremely potent nootropic. Smokers will know that until they have their morning fag, their brain just doesn't quite work. Yeah, I used to smoke when I was younger. Smoked for like 6-7 years, and then my lung collapsed, and then yeah, that's a story for another day. But so for me, nicotine is not a viable choice, because it's something, obviously nicotine is extremely addictive. Smokers, obviously there's a lot more going on than just nicotine itself, but for me it's the pathways of addiction are engraved in the brain, and I don't want to relight or rekindle them fires. But for people that don't have that tendency, that have never smoked or will never smoke, or are quite comfortable to supplement nicotine in nicotine gum, nicotine tablets, patches, spray, I think the gum's probably the best option there. It can be used as a very, very useful nootropic during the fat loss phase, during it, well, all year round essentially. It's also very good for appetite suppressant as well. It's a side effect, obviously. Again, if you're an ex-smoker or someone who smokes, you'll understand that, you know, if you've tried to stop in the past, that the moment you stop smoking, appetite goes through the roof. And it's quite a common thing for people to gain a lot of weight post stopping smoking, because their appetite comes back and they have this addiction to fill, and it usually gets filled with food. So the last kind of out-the-box nootropic I wanted to mention was something that I'm planning to do a little experiment with myself. Well, aside from modafinil, which is a prescribed medication, so you have to get it by other means, but modafinil, of course, being one of the most potent nootropics we have available to us, but that carries an extremely large amount of stress and fatigue on the body, and for me, the impact it has on appetite, culling your appetite completely. Like, I can't eat for the entire day if I take a modafinil, or have done in the past. Very, very good for work, but when you're a bodybuilder who needs to eat his meals, who also needs to think about reducing stress, sleeping and stuff, I don't think it's a viable option. But again, that was just me personally, it was too much. But the one I wanted to come on to that was a little bit out of the box. Now, there's been some useful, I mean, if you look around on the internet, you'll find some very useful studies and very interesting studies done on the use of psychedelic drugs. Microdosed, not used to achieve the desired outcome of getting trippy and high. Don't get me wrong, my younger years I had my fun. But the use of psychedelics in a microdose setting to stimulate brain function. Now, psilocybin, or the compound commonly found in magic mushrooms, is one that I'm looking to experiment with in the near future. Now, of course, done magic mushrooms, you know, years ago in the past, been to Amsterdam a fair few times. So I've been there, done it, got a t-shirt, but I've become very, very interested in the nootropic cognitive enhancement benefits of microdosing magic mushrooms, because being a natural supplement, being something that literally grows in the floor naturally, not produced in the lab, not synthetic, carries such little fatigue and stress on the body, is almost non-existent. So you are getting maximum reward with very, 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 very minute risk of that, you know, stress, overstimulation, etc. It doesn't carry the typical nootropic traits. So that's something, well, keep your eyes out for, because as soon as I am ready to start that, I will then be documenting, you know, sort of, you know, the start, the duration, you know, all the way through to whether I make it a permanent setting in my supplementation and daily regime. I know many people that I've spoken to that, you know, swear by it. I know quite a lot, you know, my mentor and people that I've spoken to in the past that still do supplement with magic mushrooms daily in a microdose. Specifically microdose. We're not going on no happy journeys to the fucking to the forest today. It's literally just enough to drive the desired outcome. Boom. But yeah, as I said, I've heard some extremely good things, so that'll be something to look forward to on the channel. I will be documenting it, and, you know, dosage and etc., which obviously will be person dependent to me. But there's a little overview of nootropics for you guys. There's a little introduction into the world. We will, over time on the channel, be going into more detail into specific interactions, what certain drugs do here, X, Y, and Z, with different pathways, different receptors, ion channels, etc., and why you need to go into such detail with these things, because there will be, you know, I refer back to the biohackers and the brain guys and the people that are using nootropics to, you know, try and create that limitless effect, you know, the blue pill kind of vibes. Not that blue pill, the limitless one, before you start your mind wandering. Well, I mean, actually, technically speaking, Viagra would be a good vasodilator, expanding blood vessels, but I don't think you'd be very focused on work if you take that. Sorry, back on track. So what the, you know, biohackers are trying to achieve is, for every single human's chemistry, every single person's genetic makeup is different, right? So every single person requires different amounts of different compounds that interact in different parts of the brain, because different parts of the brain will work more efficiently than others. You may have fantastic synapse function, so the passing of neurons across the brain, but you may be lacking in other areas, and you can manipulate your supplementation to suit. How they go about tracking and measuring and getting it right, I do not know. I think it's more, you know, because I don't believe they scan. I believe it's totally on a feel. They go by how they feel, and they try and achieve the desired outcome by tweaking certain things. But when we start diving into the individual supplements, and we start looking at specific pathways within the body, as I said, and how they what they react with, where the indication and the signal is sent to, what it does, what that causes, and what happens within the brain, you'll slowly start to understand a little bit more about how you can be particular in what you choose to take pre-workout, pre-bed, in the morning, before you start a work block, you know. So it's a fantastic topic to start going into, guys, and I highly recommend people start looking at papers, start looking at studies, and try and get as much information out of it as possible. But yeah, on the channel we will have, you know, some more specific acute topics within nootropics, as I said, looking at different supplementation, etc. Same way with everything, it's just another sort of series on the channels. This will be the nootropic series, and we'll kind of rotate them in and out as and where we see fit. But yeah, do look out for the magic mushrooms experiment. I will be embarking on it very soon. But yeah, that's it from me today, guys. Peace.